I'm Clyde Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. Gerald V. Casale, welcome to Ground Zero.
Hey, here I am, and thank you so much.
It's so good to have you on. Well, it's kind of like I'm talking to my teacher, Jerry. I'm talking to my teacher. It's like, Professor Casale, you taught me this, and now you created me. So you got to be able to understand that that's the reason why I do what I do. That's why I call the show Ground Zero, because it's kind of like the idea that, I was a downwinder when my parents lived in southern Utah. So I was thinking to myself, Ground Zero, the atomic bomb going off. And I remember you guys wearing the radiation suits and thinking to myself, I can understand that. I can understand the radiation suits. I can understand.
Well, I grew up practicing duck and cover. I really did. That's my time. Mm-hmm. We really did it. We had to practice jumping under the desk and putting our hands over our heads.
And we knew that was going to help us in a nuclear war, right? We knew that just getting under the desk would be saved from the flash and the radiation, right?
Yeah, no problem with radiation after that.
It's like we're living it again, but this time with COVID. It's like they're telling us, do this, do this, do this, and they're saying, well, the plexiglass doesn't work. The masks may or may not work. You never know. It's kind of the same thing. It's like, oh, okay, so what am I supposed to do now? Just die?
Well, compared to nuclear annihilation, COVID is like, mamby-pamby kindergarten.
I know it is.
But what you're seeing here is just really the continuation of a wholesale gatekeeper fascist corporate plan to extract any and all kind of individual freedom left and put people under a heat dome psychologically and physically. Look what happened in 9/11.
Oh, yeah, it's true.
They dared us about anybody with a turban, right? And, and so then what happened? TSA, Patriot Act, and everybody said, yeah, here you go, whatever you want. Whatever you want to do.
It's like people are willing to hand over their freedoms just for a little safety. Coming up, you get to hear that new song, I'm going to Pay You Back. We're going to come back with that coming up. It's a great song. You're going to love it. I'm going to pay you back right now. We'll be back.
A bullet for your war of attrition and your exploit.
Amazing. Gerald Casale. I'm blown away by that song. I listened to it so many times. The artwork is amazing. I mean, Davey Force is involved. Yeah. Tell me all about how that came to be, this whole song and what inspired it.
Yeah. I mean, look, DEVO has been put on ice for so long, I felt I had to just keep it alive, the spirit of de-evolution alive. DEVO was an art collective and a collaboration from the beginning. So in the spirit of what DEVO was, which was an art collective, this new project that I did was also a big collaboration. So I would just like to briefly thank people, if I'm allowed to thank the people that I collaborated with, which was Davey Force, the great CGI artist, and Tomo77, the great graphic artist, and Josh Freeze, the incredible drummer, and Steve Bartek from Oingo Boingo, and Josh Hagar from Shadow Party, another great guitar player, and of course Jeff Winter, who is the whole project producer. None of this would have happened without him. He coordinated everything, including the label release on our record store day, and all the merchandise and everything. So that's it. I just wanted to say
it's an amazing single.
Nobody does anything alone in reality.
That's right.
It was like the old days where you're excited, it's fun, you like being together, you like dealing with each other, and of course, it's a song that's a symphony of rage. It's about vengeance for, being victimized by a malignant narcissist, and which I think we all have been. I mean, so many people have been victims of narcissists who gaslight them and betray them and make them feel like it's them that are nuts and that there's something wrong with them. And
that seems to be, we're getting that from all areas now, and it's difficult to live anymore without being told, well, I don't like you because you said this, or I don't like you. And see, and that's the thing that I don't understand. I was going to ask you, I was thinking to myself, DEVO's been around since the 70s. And when you first started, I don't know if you could say it was a pessimistic view of the future. I mean, did you ever think it'd get this bad?
No. I mean, we didn't think we were even pessimistic. I realized we were positing a dystopian future, but we really thought it was accurate. But did we think it would be like this? No, because no matter how prescient you are, no matter how original you are, you can't imagine what it's really going to be like. It's like if you read Orwell's 1984, you know, he gets so many things right, but of course, when he gets specific, it's kind of cute and silly compared to what happened, because you can't anticipate really the twists and mutations of technological gains against of devolutionary, you know, destruction of nature. Mm-hmm. And so where we're at now is 9/11 Part 2, which is exponentially worse than 9/11, which is COVID, and how that was used. Now, how do you pronounce the premier chairman of China's name? I'm not a racist, but
Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping. There you go.
Right, I'm against all stupidity, so I didn't want to say it wrong. But okay. Look what he did. Look what him and his people did, right? All these gatekeepers are the same. What they are hysterically afraid of is freedom of information, because that's what liberty is about. That's what true life is about when you're fighting off death. It's freedom of information.
Yes.
So they hid it from everybody. We'll never really know the truth, but after about 6-7 weeks, it got so bad they thought, okay, you know, we got to share this with the gatekeepers around the globe. So they tell Trump and his henchmen here, the Swampster, you know, cabinet and White House that he had. And what do? They double down on the same kind of thing. They suppress it. Then they dismiss it. Then they turn it into a hoax. So the virus itself, which only just wants to live, and so it, you know, it's not evil. It just is against human life, and humans just one species. So it gets a 3.5-month jump on the human species because of these fucking morons needing to control information.
Okay, we're on the radio, so you can't use swear words. We're on the radio, so you got to be careful of that. That's okay. I know you get passionate. That happens. I understand that very much. In fact, that's a lot of the things that you know, we talk about on the show, because we say to our, you know, I try to be as apolitical as possible, because I look at politicians the same way I look at monsters. I see them as, you know, I don't see them as saviors. I don't see apotheosis as my go-to. I look at art. I look at history. I look at literature, and I say that's what we need to be a part of. And I know that was the purpose of DEVO. Wouldn't that be what DEVO was trying to do?
Of course, this isn't about Republicans or Democrats. This is about malfeasance. This is about people that stand in the way of liberty. This is about ideologues. And they can be from any party. They can be from any political system. Everything's political. All art is political, because everything has implications about the way you live. Mm-hmm. So, yes, it's stupid to go, let's not talk about politics. It's like that in itself, saying that, takes everything off the table, and now I'm going to leave. I'm not even going to eat dinner with you.
That's what happened. I mean, you're not invited to the Thanksgiving meal, or you're sitting at the card table with everybody else. When did you realize that everything that DEVO did was actually, it was going beyond that of what DEVO was doing? Because I know that DEVO was about the art and about the lit and about all that stuff. But then, of course, you know, you're talking about de-evolution. And what do you think the turning point was? 9/11? Because that's when irony died, I think. And I think the whole concept of irony and art
you got that
died.
Right.
Yeah. So when did it happen for you?
Well, see, it happened after Kent State for me. I mean, everybody you mentioned as an influence and you were talking about, we all took the proverbial cliched red pill. You know, it's cliched at this point. But it was after Kent State and the killings, you know, and I was right there, and 2 of the 4 people who were shot were my friends.
Alison Krauss, you were right next to her, weren't you?
Yeah, she was right behind me to my right, and Jeffrey Miller was 20 feet to my left behind me, and they shot over our heads, and I was closer to the guard than they were, and the guard was the same age as us, so I think my theory is they couldn't handle it because they had gas masks on, we didn't, so they could see our faces, they could see us, they could see individuals. So I just think they couldn't take shooting the front line. They he shot a little high.
Right.
And the people that were even less deserving, quote, to get shot were the ones who were wounded and killed.
Right.
But anyway, it was after that I started to see in an analytical, holistic way that everything, including the brand called freedom in America, was a big lie. And I won't use any obscenities here, but it was a big F lie. And it really, from the beginning, with my friends and I, as we were sitting around night after night coming up with these theories about de-evolution, it was all driven by that. So in the beginning, I thought I knew what I was doing. And Mark and I then wrote songs where we thought we knew what we were doing. But to answer your question honestly, of course we didn't. We only thought we knew what we knew then, and we couldn't know what happened. And so it went way beyond. We now exist in this weird, to me, a weird, like, alternate reality nightmare. Like we went through one of those wormholes.
Yep.
Like the astrophysicists posit in the...
I talk about it all the time, Jerry. I say that we're in a different timeline. You see the loops. You notice the loops in the timeline when everything happened in Kabul, where it looked like Vietnam, and they were putting the flag in the ground like Iwo Jima. It was like they were doing these time loop trolling. It was like it's like time is trolling us, Jerry. It's trolling us.
Absolutely.
It really is.
You.
Yeah.
I'm with you. And it only seems like the same place. It seems like the same town. They seem like your same friends in the same restaurants. It isn't. It's like that parallel universe thing, the bubble universe that astrophysicists talk about.
Yeah.
We went into one, and it ain't coming back.
Well, and I've talked about this with several physicists and quantum physicists, that Stephen Hawking said that if the Higgs boson was ever discovered, it could be unstable. And if it's unstable, then we are devolving. That, yes, entropy is happening, and we don't know that the universe is eating itself because we don't sense it. The Earth senses it because it's sensitive to it with the magnetic field. But beyond that, we don't know. We're just in the midst of it because it's like being in a mob and not knowing you're in a mob until someone gets shot. Like, Ken Stick.
You know what? I know. That's exactly what's happening, and there's no question that de-evolution is real.
Yeah. The more I think about it, the more, and that's why I thought it was just so important and exciting that I have you on the show, because I don't feel so alone, in the way I think, because I talk about this all the time. And, it was like in the music that I listened to when I was growing up, like DEVO, it was the things I was reading. I mean, it's like one of the things that I was turned on to at an early age was the Church of the Subgenius. And I know that you guys were also a part in that as well.
Oh, yeah.
And it's because of Dadaism. It's because taking the lows and the highs and putting together in some semi-sweet chocolate that you're dealing with every day. You have to take the evil and the good and put it together, and it makes this kind of strange synergy. And
that's the only smart thing to do. And when you said that, when I heard you say that, I thought, that's it. This guy's got me. That's what we used to say. We said it was the high and the low, and how low could you go with DEVO? And it was like, ha, ha, ha. But that's what we were doing in reality, both musically and visually. That's exactly what we were doing because we thought that was the only honest art.
Well, it's kind of like the idea that, when I hear Beautiful World, I hear doublethink in Beautiful World. This song, Beautiful, it's like, it's a beautiful world for you, but not for me. And I'm going, wait a minute, that's a contradictory statement. Kind of like what Orwell talked about. It's like, yeah, it's a beautiful world for some people, but what about the guy that's, drooling in the street, doesn't have food to eat? It's not a beautiful world for him. Every day he wakes up and he's treated badly, or he has to get that next hit of a drug that he wants. And so it's all about perspective. And then when you're talking about things like liberty, I think of songs like Freedom of Choice, where I remember hearing that song thinking to myself, those guys got it down because they're saying freedom of choice is what you've got, but then freedom from choice is what you want. And that is that's the dichotomy. What are you talking about? You want choice, but then you demand no choice. That's the thing that's so
human
weird.
Nature.
Well,
human nature. The duality of it is the dark side of human nature always wins because they want to conform and they want to be told what to do, and they live in fear.
Right.
And that's where we are now times 100.
Oh, no kidding. I think that a lot of people need to hear that this is the case. People think that we're going to be living no-risk lives, and it's not going to happen.
No, it's a joke. And like Bob Dylan said a long time ago, he not busy being born is busy dying. There you go. I'm with you.
It's like I've known you my whole life, Gerald. It's like I've known you, and I have known you my whole life, listening to the music and enjoying my DEVO records. And I just saw that video on the DEVO channel about how the first DEVO album was made, and the Chichi Rodriguez story was just an amazing story. I didn't even know it was Chichi Rodriguez until I got a little older, but it's because of the fact that the face is so mutated.
Yeah, because Warner Brothers made us do that.
They made you do that? They made you.
Yeah,
that's right. They did that interview.
Chichi.
Yeah, they said that you couldn't just use his face without permission.
That's right.
And then you eventually met Chichi Rodriguez.
He gave us permission, but it was too late for them to reprint the cover.
Oh, okay. Well, is that the case that, you deal with, you want to do something in tribute to someone, but then you have lawyers come along and say, you just can't do that. Sure. You can't do that.
Creative people know one reality, and then the gatekeepers come in. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to ask you about Jocko Homo.
Sure.
So you were talking about Kent State, talking about the shooting, how everything evolved from there, and you were thinking about the de-evolution. Jocko Homo, was that some phrase that you came up with or that Mark came up with? Said everything's all gone Jocko Homo, let's write a song about it. Was that the foundation for DEVO?
It came from two sources. The famous 1932 or 3 horror film Island of Lost Souls, starring Lon Chaney and Charles Lawton.
Oh, yeah. Island of Dr. Moreau.
Well, no, actually, the original film is called Island of Lost Souls.
Exactly.
But, yeah, but based on the book, right. Exactly. And one of my favorite professors was Ian Short. He was he taught me how to do photo silk screening and printmaking. And I had done, like 3/4 at Kent State classes with him. And then, I moved on. Then Mark was coming in from Akron, because Mark was like 2 years younger than me. And he started taking art classes at Kent State. And he took a course from Ian. And Ian already knew about all my de-evolution raps. And Ian had found this pamphlet and knew that Mark and I were working together. So he gave it to Mark when Mark was in his class. And it was called Jocko Homo, Heaven-Bound King of the Apes. And awesome. It was by B.F. Shattuck, this, a right-wing religious fanatic guy. And the cover was the devil at the top of the stairwell beckoning this man at the bottom of the stairs to come up as if he was going to heaven. But heaven is hell, and he's leaving heaven to go to hell and ascending the stairs. And the front face of every stair has a different cardinal sin on it, like fornication, of course, and usury and this and that, right? So, and the devil, the devil is smiling and beckoning with his hand. And, and of course, that was like, okay, we got that, and we got Island of Lost Souls, so say no more.
Are we not men?
Here's our name check song.
I remember growing up, I was told, Jerry, that Dan Aykroyd discovered you, and then I was told that David Bowie discovered you, and I was just curious, what came first, SNL, David Bowie, or Dan Aykroyd?
Totally independent and, parallel channels. What happened was, it was a goal of mine to be on Saturday Night Live starting in 1975, when DEVO was an unknown band in Akron, and it only played live twice. And once we made the film, The Truth About De-Evolution, the 10-minute introductory kind of manifesto that laid out what de-evolution was, I started sending that plus our self-produced single on Boogie Boy Records, Jocko Homo Backed with Mongoloid, started sending packages to Dan Aykroyd at Saturday Night Live in New York. And, of course, I think they were probably, the way reality worked, they were just going in the waste bin. I heard nothing. We heard nothing. We sent maybe 3 times these packages. So, in the meantime, Bob Mothersbaugh and I go to see Iggy Pop on his Idiot tour in Cleveland, and David Bowie's playing keyboards for him, and we are armed with our demo cassette and our video cassette, and we managed to get backstage and leave it. And Iggy Pop actually watches it and tells David about it. David listens and watches and freaks out. After that, a guy named Stan Diamond contacts me, and it's David Bowie's lawyer in L.A. And David Bowie wants to talk to us about producing our record. And this is like September. And so the talks went on, and we left October 31st, Halloween, flew back to Akron, and we met David then 2 weeks later at the Max's Kansas City in New York City, and thought we were going to have an album produced by him in Germany, but then he decided to do this film, Just a Gigolo, and tried to push back the recording of the album by 4 months, and I just thought that was unacceptable because in the meantime, the Talking Heads had released, the Ramones had released, Blondie had released, B-52s had released. I felt we were missing our moment in history of the zeitgeist. We were part of that. We had been in basements and garages since 1973 in Akron, honing our act, and people only saw us on Saturday Night Live 5 years later when it was completely, fully formed, and DEVO was a real entity that was totally worked out, right? That's when they saw it, and people were scared and blown away. And so the reason we were on Saturday Night Live had nothing to do with Bowie, nothing to do with Aykroyd. It had to do with us being in Neil Young's movie and meeting his manager, Elliot Roberts. And Elliot said, hey, Neil says you guys are great, and so far you haven't wanted to have a manager. I said, yeah, these people coming to me, they're horrible. They want 20%. They want a piece of the publishing. They wanted me to sign a 5-year contract, and he waves his hand in front of my face. He goes, shh, hush, hush, my prince. I want 15%. I don't want any of your publishing, and we'll do a handshake. If you don't like me, give me 30 days notice. If I don't want you, I'll give you 30 days notice. That's the way Neil and I work. That's the way I work. That's the way Joni Mitchell and I work. That's the way I work. And I said, wow, that's pretty good. But I go, there's something else. And he goes, what's that? Like, that wasn't good enough for you? I said, we won on Saturday Night Live. He looks at me and he goes, done. I go, what do you mean done? He goes, I'm friends with Lorne Michaels. Come into my office Monday morning. So we did. While we were still in L.A., Mark and I come into his office. And, of course, it was all set up. He had already talked to Lorne. Now the phone call was for it was showtime. And he puts it on speaker back when there was only hard lines in a black phone with a big handle. And we hear Lorne and him talking. And Lorne says, yeah, I'd like to have him on the show. And Neil, and Elliot's looking at us like, raising his eyebrows and like, hey.
Right.
And we're so impressed. And he hangs up and he goes, done. So am I your manager? And we go, yeah. And so later we find out that what he did is promise Lorne that Neil Young would be on Saturday Night Live because Lorne had been trying for 2 years to get him on there. And he promised Lorne that if he put on DEVO, who Lorne knew nothing about, didn't give a shit about.
You can't use swear words. We're on the radio, so you got to be careful of that.
I'd never heard that he would promise him Neil.
Mm-hmm.
And he did promise him Neil, and Neil did come on. And we came on the week after the Rolling Stones.
Yeah,
so it was perfect.
That was perfect.
Satisfaction.
But yeah, that's another thing. I was watching DEVO videos long before MTV came along. You think you guys are responsible for MTV? Because I think maybe somebody got wind of it. Because I also was noticing that they were playing your videos on Night Flight.
I certainly think that we influenced Bob Pittman and John Sykes' idea because when they started, they only started in 3 cities. They had no content. They had a David Bowie video. They had a Rod Stewart live video. They had then Video Killed the Radio Star. And they had 4 DEVO videos. So they played those 7 videos all day long, over and over with their new VJs. So unless they had some content, they couldn't have started their idea.
Right.
And they started in 3 cities, and within a year, they had about 40 videos because every company was jumping on the bandwagon and starting to make their bands make videos. But it was because we were making something that wasn't even called a music video. We thought we were making art films.
Yeah.
We thought we were making music-driven short films. That's exactly what we thought we were doing.
Well, once again,
and we were going to be like the Three Stooges of rock and roll. We were going to put out a laser disc every year with short films that were all connected with interstitial narrative and plot.
You were saying you came on a week after the Rolling Stones. You opened the show with Satisfaction. I was just curious about the Stones and whether or not Mick Jagger and Keith Richards knew of the song and what they thought of it.
Yeah, the only reason we were even allowed to put it on our debut album on Warner Brothers was Mark and I flew to New York and got permission from Mick Jagger to put the song on the record because back then intellectual property was taken very seriously and people had decided it was some kind of a parody, and parody was a copyright infringement without permission. So we didn't feel it was a parody. In fact, we thought it was a tribute because we thought it was one of the greatest rock and roll songs in history ever written.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we had the, temerity to cover it. It's like, can you believe anybody would try to cover Satisfaction? But we thought we could, because obviously when you hear it, it's got nothing to do with their satisfaction, except that it has it's in practice, like, in other words, proof of concept, what de-evolution is. You feel the lack of satisfaction in our music, where in Jagger's music, the lyrics are talking about getting no satisfaction, but the music is very much satisfaction.
Exactly.
It's like almost R&B rock. So it was funny because we just were afraid Nick would say no. And he listened for about 30 seconds and got up and started dancing around like Mick Jagger and said, I like it. I like it.
That's awesome. And, when you see and you talk to people about Satisfaction, a lot of people say that it's one of the best covers of a song and most original covers of a song that's ever been produced.
And that's what you really want in a cover, is like, you want it reimagined, and you want it to be original. You don't want somebody to just try to like faithfully produce the notes and the melody pattern. That's kind of constipated, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Not creative. Like, right. What are you doing? You're a cover band. Yeah, this was way beyond a cover.
It was like Mark was saying, what Devo was like sound of things falling apart, and that's what it kind of reminded me of when I heard Satisfaction, things falling apart.
Well, that was a log line I gave to Warner Brothers Records for our promo campaign for the debut record, is right. The sound of things falling apart. I gave them that.
Too Much Paranoia is the sound of things falling apart. That song.
Oh yeah.
that whole part in there, just it's almost like that Led Zeppelin orgasm moment where everything falls apart and you're hearing Devo, just all the instruments are like falling apart during Too Much Paranoia. That's a great song too.
That was so much fun to play live. Oh my God.
I tell people all the time too that Swelling Itching Brain is a song that when you listen to it, it gives you a headache. It
sure does.
Was that based on someone's headache? Because it certainly does create a headache when you hear it. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that was all Mark, that one, and I have to say I just scratched my head, but he was really into it. And yeah, it gave me a headache.
What about Mr. Kamikaze, Mr. DNA, another favorite Devo song of mine? What is that about?
Well, I wrote Smart Patrol DNA, and of course what that's about is the duality of human nature, but more importantly is that we have an altruistic gene, supposedly, that gives us the capacity to live for the species beyond us as an individual, which seems to be missing now.
Right.
It's everybody's like me, and fuck you.
You can't use swear words. We're on the radio, so you got to be careful of that.
Oh, jeez.
All right, go ahead.
Oh my God.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh boy.
Our producers are working the producers are working.
They told me not to do that.
Yeah, it's okay. They're working the thing like crazy tonight, but that's okay because hang out with us
okay. So is Screw You okay?
Yes, that's fine. You guys are going to do a tour, right?
You could call it that. It's a mini tour. It's 4 shows. Riot Fest, Chicago, September 19th. Radio City Music Hall, Sophie Amphitheater next to the Sophie Stadium, the new one downtown LA, September 25th. And then the famous Punk Rock Bowling Festival in Las Vegas the very next day, September 26th.
And it's funny, my stepson is a big Devo fan, and he looks a lot like Mark too. He's got the curly hair, but it's red.
The red hair, like Ian Hunter from Mott the Hoople and Ginger Baker from the Cream.
Because he's like having a hard time with his curly hair, and I said, well, you either can look like Rick Astley or you can look like Dave Mustaine. Take your pick.
Many more too. I mean, besides who I named, there's, who am I thinking of? The guy from Slade, Noddy Holder.
I'm actually related to Noddy Holder, which is cool.
Are you kidding?
No, I'm not.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm related to him.
I loved Slade. I saw Slade in 1975 at the Cleveland Public Arena. Oh, my God, it was good.
I'm a big Kiss fan.
There was a big writer for Melody Maker in England that hated Devo, and his big put down at Devo was the thinking man's Kiss. And I thought, what's wrong with that? That's kind of good.
It is good. Guys, I don't know about Rob Zombie. I mean, it's funny. When I watched Dragula, I couldn't help but think that I was watching a Devo video. Did you guys have anything to do with inspiring Rob to do the stuff that he did in that?
Not on purpose. And I directed Rob in a bunch of segments for the classic movie channel, TCM. And found out he was completely dyslexic. He couldn't read any of the the prompts that were written for him that he had agreed to contractually read. He couldn't read them.
Oh.
So he just made up what he wanted to say.
He comes with a breed of the guys that were raised with these sci-fi horror films. One of the first things
he's a horror fan. Yeah, he's a horror student.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I had a B horror fanzine when I was a kid. I ended up doing the voice of the Toxic Avenger, which was kind of...
that Toxic Avenger, great. And you got a great radio voice, so you must have had a great... I'm going to go back and listen to that now that I know.
Yeah, you got to go back. Listen, Toxie 4... Tale of Two Toxies. I play both the Noxious Offender and Toxic Avenger.
Yeah, you got the voice.
Well,
when you say I'm the professor, which is funny, that could even be like pejorative, but you're the ideal student because you took whatever you thought you were getting from me and were turned on to by me, and you took it further, which is what any professor hopes a student does, and you did. So
you're the brother or father I had never had. It's kind of amazing that we're having this meeting today. We're going to go to the calls right now. Let's go to John calling from New York. John, hi. You're on with Jerry Casale. Go ahead.
Hello, Jerry. Big DEVO fan, especially from the hardcore DEVO days. And it was a real treat. I got to be able to see you in Manhattan when you performed the early tunes in Bob Casale's honor a few years back.
Yeah.
And I was positively shocked when I heard that you were working with Jade Dellinger and Bob Lewis on a DEVO exhibit sometime around 2017, and even more stunned to see that you allowed Bob Lewis on stage at a devotional and actually picked up a guitar and played with him. And there's got to be an amazing story here. How did things go from some pretty bad blood to being on stage with Bob Lewis? I mean, first of all, it's great that you did that. How did that come about? There's a huge story here.
Well, time heals all wounds, but also Bob found out that what he thought was happening back when wasn't in fact ever happening, and that, I was falsely fingered for something I didn't do. And
by the way, I'm not sure that the people listening here really know the full story, so it might help to explain in detail what happened.
Oh, well, we can't go into detail, but Bob Lewis, was original collaborator. He was my best friend in college and an academic and a poet, and he and I came up with the original ideas about the theories of de-evolution, but there was no musical application yet. It was art and it was literature. We were writing, and he was a very good writer, and so when I started applying these kind of de-evolution ideas to the music, that's when I met Mark, and it went from my blues-based, kind of bias, because that's what I could do. I was in a locally famous blues band called the Numbers Band, 50, 60, 75, that was famous in Kent and Akron and Cleveland. And that didn't cut it with Mark, and Mark was playing, in a band called Flossie Bobbitt and doing, like, prog rock, covers of like Emerson, Lake and Palmer kind of stuff. And we agreed that neither of that was like up to our visual art. Our visual art was original and controversial and confrontational and transgressive. And why were we doing this kind of like, music that wasn't original? So we started deciding to do original music. And that's what we did. We started with Tabula Rosa, and we made original music. And Bob Lewis felt that he, because he was in on this original stuff, that he had some kind of, whatever you would call it, rights or agency to DEVO the band. But, any song I wrote that had part of it written by Bob Lewis, he got credit for and publishing for. So there was no fraud, or there was not. He was never disenfranchised from anything real. But like raps and concepts, that isn't what a band gets signed to a record label for, right? They get signed to a record label for the songs,
right?
And it's the songwriters that are driving it.
Wasn't it difficult with all the imagery and the video and all that stuff that you were doing? That a lot of record companies were saying, "Why the hell do you want to do this for?" They were confused.
Of course,
They didn't want that done. They didn't get it.
Yeah.
Finally, MTV comes around. Oh, we get it now. We get what DEVO's doing. You're ahead of your time.
Right.
I got the impression that one record executive said to Bob Lewis, "You'll never work in this town again," or something like that, and basically told him to go away.
Probably. I've heard all of those things, over and over and over. And, so Bob realized he kind of like over time he realized what the reality was, and that he wasn't dissed, he wasn't defrauded, and of course I respect him. I mean, he's a great mind. And the Jay Dellinger thing, I've always tried hard. I keep the spirit of DEVO alive. I always think of the group and what's best for the group, and I always thought we should have an exhibition. The same way David Bowie had an exhibition at the Tate in London.
Mike in Kentucky, you're on with Gerald Casale. Go ahead.
Wow, man, thanks, Clyde. Listen, I got the life-changing DEVO story. Gerald, I got my core group together of kids in the Bay Area, went to see you in 1978 at the Warfield Theater in San Francisco.
Oh,
2 days later, we actually had a meeting, and we went and got our surfer skateboarder hair cut off, quit wearing 501 jeans and steel-toe boots, and I was one of those guys that had to shed the blood for DEVO, because almost immediately we had the derby jacket crowd saying, "DEVO, DEVO, DEVO," and it was a collection of kids that grew, that were kids that were easily picked on. We learned from you guys to question the status quo.
Eliminate the ninnies and the twits.
We had to do it. We had to do it. And you taught me to stand up for my friends, and you taught me to think like an individual.
Thank you.
And to this day, my best friend calls me, and we don't say love. We say what's round on both ends and high in the middle, bro.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for calling. Thank you. Gerald, it's been a pleasure being on the show with you tonight. My gosh, it'll be a memory for me. Someone who I really admire. Thank you so much. You're amazing. Yeah. And hope you had a good time. I really do.
I did.
Fantastic. All right. What else can I say? Jerry Casale.